Introduction. Attila the Hun, often remembered as the Scourge of God, was one of the most feared and influential leaders of the late Roman world. His reign over the Huns from 434 to 453 CE marked one of the most turbulent periods in the history of Europe. Feared by both the Eastern and Western Roman empires, Attila led vast armies across the continent, leaving behind stories of destruction, diplomacy, and a legacy that has fascinated historians for centuries. Early life and rise to power. Attila was born into the ruling family of the Huns, a nomadic people of Central Asian origin who had migrated into Europe by the 4th century. Although little is known about his exact birthplace or childhood, historians suggest he grew up in a world of constant movement, horse riding, and warfare. The Huns were expert horsemen and archers, and Attila would have been trained from a young age in the art of mounted combat. In 434 CE, Attila and his brother Bleda inherited the leadership of the Huns after the death of their uncle, King Rugila. Together, they ruled a confederation of tribes stretching from the Danube to the steppes of Central Asia. Almost immediately, Attila showed himself to be a shrewd and ambitious leader. He recognized that the Roman empires, though powerful, were divided and vulnerable. Attila exploited this division through a mix of warfare and diplomacy. Early campaigns against the Eastern Roman Empire. Soon after coming to power, Attila turned his attention to the Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople. In 434, the Treaty of Margus was signed, granting the Huns large annual tributes of gold in exchange for peace. However, Attila used even minor violations of the treaty as pretexts for invasion. In 441 and again in 447, he led devastating campaigns through the Balkans, destroying cities, enslaving populations, and forcing Emperor Theodosius II to pay ever greater sums to buy peace. These invasions demonstrated Attila's skill as both a general and a political strategist. He understood that the true power of the Huns lay not in holding territory, but in extracting wealth through intimidation. The Romans, exhausted by continuous attacks, saw paying tribute as preferable to facing Attila's wrath. The turning to the west. After years of pressuring the Eastern Empire, Attila shifted his focus westward. The Western Roman Empire was weaker and more fragmented, offering new opportunities for conquest and plunder. By the late 440s, Attila had established himself as the dominant figure among the barbarian groups in Europe, including the Ostrogoths, Gepids, and Alans, many of whom served in his armies. One of the most famous stories from this period involves Princess Honoria, the sister of Western Emperor Valentinian III. Around 450 CE, Honoria, seeking to escape an unwanted marriage, secretly sent Attila a ring and a plea for help. Attila interpreted, or pretended to interpret, this as a marriage proposal, and he demanded half of the Western Empire as her dowry. When the request was denied, Attila had the perfect excuse to invade. The invasion of Gaul. In 451, Attila launched one of his most ambitious campaigns, leading a massive army into Gaul, modern-day France. His forces ravaged towns and cities as they advanced, striking terror into the Roman world. The Western Roman general Flavius Aetius, often called the last of the Romans, realized that he could not defeat Attila alone. He formed an alliance with the Visigoths under their king Theodoric. The decisive clash came at the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, also known as the Battle of Chalons. It was one of the last great battles of the ancient world, fought between a coalition of Romans and Visigoths against Attila's Huns and their allies. The fighting was brutal, and although the exact outcome is debated, Attila was forced to retreat. The battle halted his advance into Western Europe and preserved the independence of Gaul. The invasion of Italy. Undeterred by the setback in Gaul, Attila turned his attention to Italy in 452. His armies swept into the fertile Po Valley, destroying cities like Aquileia, which was said to have been so thoroughly destroyed that even its location was forgotten for centuries. Panic gripped Rome as Attila marched southward. It was at this point that one of the most legendary encounters in history took place. Pope Leo I, accompanied by a delegation of Roman officials, met Attila near the river Mincio. Remarkably, Attila agreed to withdraw. The reasons for his retreat are debated. Some argue that famine and disease had weakened his army. Others that threats from the Eastern Empire forced him to turn back, and still others that the Pope's presence carried a spiritual weight. Whatever the cause, Attila withdrew from Italy, sparing Rome itself from destruction. Attila's death. Just 1 year later, in 453, Attila died suddenly on the night of his wedding to a young bride named Ildiko. Accounts differ. Some say he choked on his own blood after a nosebleed, others that he was assassinated. Whatever the truth, his death plunged the Hunnic Empire into chaos. His many sons fought among themselves for control, and the subject tribes quickly broke away. Within a few decades, the Huns had disappeared as a major power in Europe. Legacy. Attila the Hun remains one of the most iconic figures of the ancient world. To the Romans, he was a barbarian scourge, a figure of almost supernatural terror. Christian writers portrayed him as the Scourge of God, sent as divine punishment for the sins of mankind. Yet to his own people, he was a great king who united the Huns and brought them immense wealth and power. Modern historians view Attila as a complex leader, ruthless in war, but also skilled in diplomacy, capable of both destruction and negotiation. His reign, though brief, reshaped the balance of power in Europe and played a key role in the eventual collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Conclusion. Attila's story is not merely of conquest and destruction, but also of the fragile nature of power and empire. His rise demonstrated how a determined leader could challenge even the mightiest states of the ancient world, while his sudden death showed how quickly such power could unravel. Nearly 1,600 years later, the name of Attila the Hun still evokes images of fierce warriors, burning cities, and the clash between Rome and the barbarian world.